Hello and welcome back to the Movie Memo Recaps. Today we are going to recap a 1987 movie titled Death Wish 4. Please be advised that there will be spoilers ahead. In the opening scene, a woman walks to her automobile in a dark subterranean parking lot, but it doesn't start. She then notices one masked man standing in the distance, and shortly the men become three. Despite her efforts, the car fails to cooperate. The attackers suddenly disappear, and the woman breathes a sigh of relief, but it is fleeting as the men reappear and begin attacking her car with crowbars. The men get inside the vehicle and haul the crying woman out. They begin to pull her clothing off, but Paul Kersey arrives. Paul informs the men that he is death before shooting the first two. He pursues the other wounded man, who encounters a dead end. The man pleads for his life, but Paul fatally shoots him. He goes to examine the body but is astounded to discover his own face. Paul then wakes up from his nightmare, drenched in sweat. The following day, Paul's stepdaughter, Erica, pays him a visit at the office, eager to show him her new drawings. He notices that she is anxious, but Erica insists she is okay. He receives a call from his woman, Karen, Erica's mother, who works as a reporter at a local news station. The family gathers for dinner that night, but Erica's boyfriend, Randy, arrives outside to take her out, so Karen promises to be home by 11. Paul looks through the glass and sees Randy pass Erica a cigarette before they race away. The young couple pulls up to a neighborhood arcade crowded with degenerates and bullies. Randy goes inside the club to deal with a dealer named Jojo. Jojo likes the innocent Erica and leads her into another room to discuss. He hands her a bag of nuts, stating they're unique. At home, Paul and Karen intend to watch a movie. Paul is concerned about Erica hanging around with Randy, but Karen says he works well in school, so he is fine. Before they leave, they receive a phone call. Paul and Karen run to the local hospital, where they discover Erica has overdosed on drugs. They observe the physicians urgently attempting to resuscitate the unconscious Erica, who dies on the table. Karen is sad after losing her kid. Paul, not wanting to waste time, follows Randy to the arcade one night. Inside, he watches Randy confront Jojo, who pulls him outside. Randy is furious at Erica's death and threatens to inform the cops about Jojo, but the dealer stabs Randy fatally. Paul confronts Jojo, who flees to the rooftops, but Paul shoots him dead before he can get away. Later, Sergeant Reiner interacts with a witness who observed Paul's car and reports it to the detective, who assigns Detective Phil to investigate. The next day, Paul returns home to find an envelope at his door with the words "I know who you are." He then receives a phone call from the sender, who refuses to reveal his identity and threatens to contact the police unless they meet. The man parks a limousine at his gate and commands him to enter. The man brings Paul to a spacious estate where he meets Nathan White, a wealthy tabloid publisher. Paul is doubtful of Nathan, but the man admits that he wants to pay Paul to kill someone. While staring at a painting of his wife and daughter, Nathan describes how his daughter became hooked on drugs and died from an overdose. He spent a fortune gathering intelligence on the city's gangs and offers Paul money, guns, and all of his resources to eliminate them. Paul is interested, but he would want to take a few days to consider his options. Paul and Karen attend Erica's burial, and Karen blames herself for failing her daughter. Paul becomes enraged after witnessing his woman's breakdown and blames the city and the mafia. Karen wants to begin writing on the city's drug problem, but her boss opposes, arguing that even the very wealthy use drugs and are uninterested in reading about them. Karen is insistent, so her supervisor agrees but advises her to be cautious. She travels to the morgue, insisting on seeing all the bodies from drug occurrences, and she is astonished to discover that they are all children. She goes to the arcade and flashes cash at a dealer, requesting information about the streets. The man agrees but asks for more money. Nathan informs Paul about the two gangs that control the drug trade, one commanded by a man named Ed and the other by two brothers, Jack and Tony, who are now at odds. Paul has decided to take on the assignment, so Nathan guides him to a contact for his weaponry. Detective Phil has identified a link between Jojo's shots and those from a 2-year-old case involving the Vigilante. After hearing this, Sergeant Reiner decides to pay Paul a visit. The two cops interview Paul about his whereabouts and activities on the night of Jojo's murder, but he claims to have been at home alone. The cops leave, intending to investigate Paul more. Paul's first target for Nathan is Ed, who is now having a birthday party at his mansion. Paul has infiltrated the party and is working as a waiter. Jack and Tony both show up to the party, and the men appear to be friendly. As Ed, Jack, and Tony arrive to discuss business, Paul, who is inside the mansion installing bugs in Ed's phones, must conceal himself. Ed worries if the brothers had anything to do with Jojo's death, but they insist on their innocence in order to maintain their fragile harmony. Ed then summons one of his underlings, Vincent, and violently stabs him to death because he stole from him. The men eventually spot Paul hiding, but he claims to be having a bathroom break. Ed chooses against killing Paul and instructs him to assist in disposing of the body while instructing his underling to kill him once they're finished. Paul accepts and helps transport the body to a car but then attacks the man and flees the building. He then tracks down Ed's subordinates in a restaurant, using knowledge about the men's love of wine to craft an explosive disguised as a wine bottle. Paul primes the bomb in his car before carrying it into the restaurant in a briefcase. In front of the men, Paul claims to be from a wine firm and offers the bartender a free taste. The man adores it, so Paul offers to give the thugs a sample. He gives them the bottle, but one mobster believes he has met Paul before. Paul flees the room before the bomb detonates, killing all three guys. Ed learns of the attack and suspects the brothers are attempting to deceive him. Paul's next target is the brothers' underling, a man with a lengthy criminal record but no convictions. Paul traces the dangerous man down to a video rental store, where he conducts a covert operation. Paul breaks into the premises with a silenced submachine pistol. He confronts the criminal and shoots him dead, easily dispatching his two underlings. The brothers learn of the attacks and believe Ed is attempting to deceive them, with the younger brother insisting on an attack. Paul's next target is the brothers' top hitman, Frank Bobbs, who lives in a luxury condominium. Unaware that Paul is watching them, Frank and his wife are preparing to leave for the evening. Once they depart, Paul picks the apartment's locks and enters. Frank and his woman arrive at the limo, but he has forgotten his tickets and returns back up. Paul is bugging Frank's phone when he hears the doorbell. Frank arrives but feels something is wrong, so he draws his gun and begins to investigate. He eventually confronts Paul, who disarms him and attempts to flee, but Frank captures Paul and begins attacking him. Paul recovers and crushes Frank's skull against a cupboard before flinging him over the side of his balcony. Reiner and Phil, who had been watching Frank, see him fall to his death. Reiner hurries up to the apartment, as Phil notices Paul exiting the building and entering his car. He lies to Reiner, claiming he saw no one. A few days later, Nathan directs Paul to San Pedro, where a local fisherman's dock serves as a front for Ed's drug operations. Paul slips in with the men returning from their lunch break. While seeking the drug operation, Paul gets the attention of one of the men. The man confronts Paul, who knocks him out immediately. He arrives at the vast drug operation, where a lone guard keeps watch at the entryway. He approaches the man, poses as lost, and then uses his toolbox to knock him out. Behind the door, he observes men unloading drugs from fish guts and processing them. One man stumbles upon Paul, but he shoots him dead. He then sprays the entire room with bullets, killing everyone in it. Paul prepares an explosive and leaves it behind, alerting the entire factory to search for him. Virtually the entire factory quickly surrounds Paul, but before the men can kill him, the explosives detonate, forcing them to flee for safety. Paul takes advantage of the situation and flees. He fends off several men until he reaches a truck, making a swift getaway prior to his arrest. Detective Phil then reveals himself to be a double agent as he proceeds to notify Ed about Paul Kersey's identity. Ed wants to know who Paul works for and instructs Phil to find out, then kill him. Though Phil claims he is not a murderer, Ed is adamant. Paul is at his office late one night when Detective Phil arrives, pretending to follow up on a case. He nonchalantly pulls and prepares his gun. Phil wants to know who Paul works for, but he refuses to disclose. Phil cautiously aims his gun, but Paul shoots him from beneath the table and kills him. Reiner learns of Phil's death but believes he was killed because he discovered who the vigilante was. Reiner believes Paul Kersey is the suspect and seeks a warrant to pursue him. Ed discovers Phil's death and perceives a plot against him and the brothers. He contacts the brothers, and they arrange for a meeting location and time to chat. Throughout the talk, Paul overhears everything. The two groups meet on the outskirts of town, with each being distrustful of the other. Paul is observing from a distance, his gun ready. Ed and Jack meet in the middle, and Ed tries to convey his suspicions, but Tony believes he's lying. As the tension grows, Paul shoots Jack on the arm, resulting in a shootout between the two factions. In a flurry of gunfire, Jack is dead. During the chaos, Ed attempts to escape with his men, but his slowness leads to his abandonment. Jack, who is still alive, tries to shoot Ed, but Paul kills him before shooting Ed in the leg, injuring him. Paul finally appears, walking up to Ed with his gun in hand. Ed attempts to run away, but he can't go anywhere far. Paul shows him an image of Erica before shooting and killing him. Back at the station, Reiner is told by his boss to leave Paul alone because they wasted time on him rather than observing the two gangs that had just slain each other. Nathan contacts Paul and congratulates him on his successful assignment. He wants to meet with Paul and provides him his location. Paul drives to the place and sees the limousine waiting for him. Paul steps into the limousine, only to find Nathan nowhere in sight, and the driver simply disappears. Paul discovers that he is trapped and suddenly shoots out of the locked doors and escapes through the back glass. The car then explodes immediately. Paul then goes to Nathan's personal address and holds the doorman at gunpoint. An elderly man, posing as Nathan White but not the one Paul made the arrangement with, guides him. The real Nathan asserts that he has been absent for 3 months, and Paul recognizes the deception. A squad car stops Paul on his way home, searches him, and arrests him on suspicion of murder. During the trip, Paul realizes they're going in the wrong way and that the men might not be actual cops. He attacks the 2 men for long enough to cause the car to roll over. Paul soon recovers and frees himself from the handcuffs. He then grabs a gun and flees as he hears sirens in the distance. We next see the imposter reprimanding one of the cops who let Paul get away. He exposes himself to be a third drug lord who employed Kersey to eliminate his rivals. He badly wants to kill Paul to cover his tracks, and he comes up with an idea. Karen is at work when she receives a call from her drug contact regarding some inside information. She intends to meet up, unaware that it is a setup. That night, a man grabbed Karen as she was leaving her apartment and dragged her into a van that drove away. When Paul arrives home, Reiner holds him at gunpoint. Reiner disarms Paul before threatening to take revenge on Phil. Paul tells a reluctant Reiner that Phil worked with the criminals and attempted to assassinate him. As the 2 men speak, there is a phone call, and Paul hears Karen say she is afraid. The Nathan imposter insists that they meet somewhere to trade for Karen's life. Paul instinctively reaches for the phone, but instead, he seizes the chance to intimidate Reiner. He then discovers a hidden cache of weapons and explosives and prepares himself for the impending fight. He leaves and drives to the meeting place, which is in an underground parking lot. In the distance, the men sit in a car and signal Paul to approach. The men ambush Paul's car and spray it with gunfire, only to discover it is empty. Paul then shoots an explosive cartridge, killing a handful of the men and destroying fake Nathan's car as his driver attempts to flee. Only fake Nathan and one mobster remain, and they escape to a skating rink where the rest of his men are waiting. He tells them to look out for Kersey, while fake Nathan goes after Karen. When the men spot Paul, a gunfight ensues, causing havoc on the ice. Paul kills the invading attackers with his weapon. Kersey then spots fake Nathan fleeing the scene with Karen as his prisoner, so he attempts to cut them off. The 2 men meet in the middle of the misty skating rink, and fake Nathan warns him to leave or he will kill Karen. Paul murders his last man, but fake Nathan seizes the opportunity to flee the building. Karen attempts to fight fake Nathan, but he mercilessly kills her in a flurry of gunfire. Seeing his wife dead, Paul shoots the man with an explosive round, ripping him apart. Reiner appears, holding him at gunpoint, but Paul instructs him to shoot before fleeing the scene before the cops arrive. Thanks for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more of these recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.